Good morning and welcome to IMA's CMA Candidate Webinar Series. The title of today's presentation is The CMA Exam, Navigating Multiple Choice Questions, sponsored by Surgent CMA Review. I'm Margaret Lockery, and I'll be your host for today's CMA Candidate Webinar. Before we begin, I would like to thank our sponsor, Surgent CMA Review, for their support with today's webinar. Surgent is an IMA strategic partner, and their proprietary, award-winning learning platform leverages ASAP technology. This system determines what you know, and more importantly, what you don't know, and customizes a study plan to match. Surgent is the only course that continues to adapt as you study, saving you a significant amount of study time while actually better preparing you to sit for the exam. Surgent has special offers for CMA candidates, so please visit www.surgent.com for more information. It's a pleasure to have Adam Larson as part of our program, and he will be serving as moderator for today's event. Adam is the Senior Manager of Educational Technology Enablement at IMA. Hi, Adam. Welcome to the program.
Thanks so much, Margaret. I'm pleased to be a part of the CMA Candidate Webinar Series, and on behalf of IMA, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's session. At this time, I want to introduce our featured presenters for today's program. With us today, we have Amy Ford. Amy is an accounting instructor at Western Illinois University, where she teaches principles of financial and managerial accounting courses, as well as accounting for managers in the MBA program. Amy is a certified management accountant and won a 2011 Certificate of Distinguished Performance for earning one of the top overall scores in the CMA exam. Amy is a faculty advisor for Western's student chapter of IMA and was the 2011 IMA Ursula K. Albers Academic Mentor of the Year. Amy's work experience prior to teaching was at a public accounting firm. Please join me in welcoming Amy Ford.
Thank you. I look forward to discussing the CMA exam with everyone today.
Next, I'd like to introduce our second feature presenter for today's program, Lisa Bowden. As Senior Director of Business Development for IMA, Lisa works with companies and educational institutions to create awareness of the benefits of membership in a professional association, as well as the benefits of earning the Certified Management Accountant credential. Lisa is a CMA, and prior to joining IMA, she was an accounting department chair at Clear University in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Earlier in her career, Lisa held various accounting and finance positions at Ford Motor Company, Ford Credit, and IBM Corporation. It's great to have you with us, Lisa.
Thanks, Adam. I'm really pleased to be part of today's program. So before turning the presentation over, I'd like to go over the learning objectives for today's program. After participating in this webinar, you'll gain an understanding of the content and topics that are tested on the CMA exam. You'll also be able to identify the sections of the CMA exam for which you already have a good understanding. And finally, you'll be able to explain how to proceed with your preparation plans for becoming a CMA. We're looking forward to an informative presentation. So at this time, I'm going to just quickly review the agenda. So I want to welcome everybody to the webinar today. It's great to have so many of you participating in today's session and showing an interest in learning more about the CMA designation. Here's an overview of what we'll be covering. I'll start with some background on the CMA and then hand it over to Amy, who will share some sample CMA exam multiple choice questions and answers with you. That portion of the presentation gives you a chance to test your knowledge on actual, retired questions to see how much of the exam content you already know. After the sample questions are reviewed, I'll discuss why you should pursue the CMA and then explain the steps to take to start the process of becoming a CMA. We're going to have time for some questions and answers at the end as well. So first, let's start with some background information. What is the CMA? It's IMA's certification for accountants and financial professionals working in business. The CMA covers the critical skills and knowledge that accounting and financial management professionals need to have. I'll explain the CMA exam content in more detail on an upcoming slide. It's important to note that the CMA is a globally recognized certification, not a license that is granted by a U.S. state. Someone sitting for the exam in the U.S. is sitting for the same exam as someone in China, Dubai, or the Netherlands, for example. The CMA is designed specifically for accounting and financial management professionals who work inside organizations, supporting management decisions and driving business performance. So we've arrived at our first poll question, and I'm going to turn your attention to our moderator, Adam.
Thanks, Lisa. Attendees should see the first polling question now open on your console. I'd like to remind all participants you may begin responding to the poll question as soon as they are visible on your screen. We will give you about 30 seconds to respond to each question. So here's our first question. Do you plan to sit for the CMA exam within the next 12 months? Yes or no? Please be sure to click submit so that we can collect your responses. And I'm going to turn things back over to Lisa, as this is a quick yes or no question. Lisa, let's see how people respond.
Yeah. This is a quick one, so I probably won't give you the full 30 seconds, but let's see how you respond. Oh, great. This is what we normally see, people who are very much committed to the CMA program and are interested in any tips and tricks that we might be able to share with them, any insights about the CMA exam. So I'm glad that we've got you joining us today to learn more about the CMA exam and to prepare you for your upcoming exam. So let's talk a little bit about, why someone would pursue the CMA. When we were working to determine the CMA exam content, IMA went out and conducted a significant amount of research with financial executives, with CFOs, people who are familiar with the CMA exam, and people who are not very familiar with the CMA exam, anybody working in the profession, really. And what we found was that these leaders felt that they needed to raise the competency levels of their employees. Employers are telling us that they hire some very talented people, but they feel that there's a skills gap. That gap is especially apparent when it comes to planning and analysis skills, which are really important. Also, employers told us that they struggle when it comes time to identify advanced or high potential finance and accounting staff for advancement within the organization. So this is an overview of the CMA exam structure. It's composed of two parts. It tests your fluency in both accounting and finance. And the exams are structured so that they're each 4 hours in length, starting with 100 multiple choice questions and concluding with 2 essay scenarios, which are like mini cases. And these exams can be taken in any order. You can start with part 1 and then move to part 2, or vice versa. It really doesn't matter, whichever approach works best for you. This slide provides a high-level overview of the test topics, and there are more details available on the IMA website. I do want to mention that I am covering the CMA exam structure as it will be in effect for the next testing window starting January 2020. There was a slight revision to the exam, and it's primarily, the change is that the addition of the technology and analytics section at the end of part 1. There were a few other adjustments throughout the exam, and I ask that you refer to the IMA website to get more of those details, but the major change is really with the addition of that technology and analytics section in part 1. I'm going to briefly go through what's tested on the exam. We've got the section, part 1 is called Financial Planning, Performance, and Analytics. It has 6 sections. The first one is really focusing on financial accounting. The next 3, planning, budgeting, and forecasting, performance management, and cost management, they're focusing on your best practices related to things like the budgeting process, variance analysis, balanced scorecard, different costing methodologies, applying overhead, activity-based costing, and so on. Internal controls focuses on best practices in internal controls. And then you see at the bottom of the Part 1 exam that new section called Technology and Analytics. It's just being added now in January 2020, and it covers content related to accounting information systems, including topics such as data governance, technology enablement, and data analytics. We recognize that technology and analytics is playing a key role in the transformation of the finance function, and therefore we are including content related to that on the CMA exam. Now, Part 2 is called Strategic Financial Management, and it also has 6 sections. It starts out with some finance content, financial statement analysis, and corporate finance. And then decision analysis covers things like variable and fixed costs, cost volume profit analysis, contribution margin income statements. So some really great tools for supporting management decisions. Risk management covers best practices in enterprise risk management. Investment decisions, that's really your capital budgeting techniques. How do you evaluate investment decisions for your organization to ensure that you have positive returns in the future? And then finally, the last section focuses on professional ethics. This is a really important topic for our profession as well as for IMA. And one of the main areas of focus for this section is on IMA's Statement of Ethical Professional Practice. The content covered on the CMA exam, it's really relevant. And if you were to show this list of topics to a senior leader in finance or accounting, they'd tell you that they really need employees who have a mastery of these skills. So holding the CMA credential can expand an individual's career opportunities. I've heard from many CMAs who've told me that earning this credential provided them with an opportunity to move up in their organization or move into a specific part of their company that they wouldn't have been considered for before they earned the CMA. And others tell me that it helped differentiate them in the hiring process. Also, it's important to note the CMA is not industry specific. Professionals who hold a CMA work in all types of companies across all industries and in companies of all different sizes, so from multinational corporations, private firms, academic institutions, nonprofit, government, etc. IMA has awarded more than 77,000 CMA certifications to date, and demand for the certification has increased significantly over the past 10 years or so. The number of people signing up for the CMA program has more than doubled in recent years. CMAs also enjoy greater earning potential, as you'll see on this next slide. Each year, IMA conducts a salary survey of accounting and finance professionals around the world, and for 2019, the survey showed that globally, CMA-certified accounting professionals earn on average 55% more in total annual compensation than their non-certified accounting peers. The survey tends to show similar results each year, and it also shows similar results when focusing on specific employment markets around the world. So the message from this survey is that the CMA certification provides a positive return on your investment, and it's very much worth your while to become a CMA. We have a few testimonials here that I'd like to allow you some time to read through. And you notice they're from different industries at different stages of their careers. But they find value in the CMA and what it brings to them in their roles. Now that you have some background on the exam and its content, Amy's going to lead you through some sample multiple choice questions. But during this portion of the presentation, she'll show you some examples of retired CMA exam multiple choice questions, and you can test yourself to see how much you already know about the CMA exam body of knowledge. We've designed this portion of the webinar to be highly interactive. Please be prepared to answer the questions as they appear on your screen.
Thank you, Lisa. Now for this portion of the presentation, let's find out how much you already know about the topics that are tested on the CMA exam. Now the exam material is academic in nature. This material comes from textbooks and business courses that you took in college. Now in addition, many of the skills that you use in your job every day as an accountant or a finance professional, these are tested on the exam. So yes, you can do this. You can pass the CMA exam. Now, what do I mean by pass? In order to pass, you must score at least 360 out of a possible 500 points. Now, this is total points from both the multiple choice questions and the essay questions. So I just wanted to reassure you that you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to know how to do everything 100% correctly. This is very manageable. You can pass the CMA exam. Now we're about to practice with some multiple choice questions. There will be 7 questions to answer. Please respond to each question on the screen as it's presented. In addition, please keep track of the number of questions that you answer correctly. Now, all of these questions are going to be in a multiple choice format. And for this presentation, there's no numbers or calculations. Now, remember, there are actual numbers. There is numerical analysis on the actual exam. I didn't want you to think it was going to be all words. So the actual exam is a combination of both conceptual and numerical analysis when you look at the multiple choice section. Now, today's questions are adapted from retired CMA exam questions, and these questions were found in the Grind CMA Review course materials. Now, there's a lot of various topics. There's a lot of different ways that these questions are formatted. So just remember, today we're only going to look at a couple questions. So this is just really a small sample of types of questions that you could see on your actual exam. Now, as we go through these today, we're going to move pretty quickly. On the actual exam, your pace or how quickly you answer the questions is important. On average, it's about 1.5 minutes per multiple choice question. Now that average though, remember that average is for both conceptual and numerical multiple choice questions. Okay, do you have what it takes? Let's find out. All right, here is our first sample question. It's our polling question. And remember, you can begin responding as soon as they're visible on the screen. You're going to have about 30 seconds or so for each of the poll questions. All right, this comes from part 1, and it's external financial reporting decisions, that area of the exam. A corporation acquires a 30% voting interest in another corporation. In this situation, the long-term investment is generally accounted for on the investor corporation's books using which of the following reporting methods? So we have our choices: lower of cost or market, cost, consolidated, or equity. Now this part of part 1, this section of part 1 is focused on financial accounting concepts. Now in this section, candidates would need to know how to prepare financial statements. And you would need to understand recognition, measurement, valuation, and disclosure of financial statement items. All right, so I'm going to advance this screen here, and we'll see what everybody said. Okay, well, we see a variety of answers. Just over 50% of you said equity, so equity is correct. So that's 30% voting interest. Now, this is a really interesting one that we had our answers were spread out amongst all of the choices. So remember, cost set for part B, or letter B there, 15% of you said cost. Now, the cost basis is used when the investor cannot exercise significant influence over the investee. So that's usually that 20%, less than 20%. So the 30% is really important in this question. That's why B is incorrect. And then consolidated, 18% of you said consolidated. Now, consolidated reporting is ordinarily, that's going to be required when the investor controls the more than 50%. So that's why the best answer here, the correct answer, was equity. All right, let's see how you, remember, keep track how you did. Let's move on to the next question. All right, here is our question 2. This is also from part 1 of the exam, and this is from the area of performance management. A favorable materials price variance coupled with an unfavorable materials usage variance most likely results from machine efficiency problems, product mix production changes, the purchase and use of higher than standard quality materials, or the purchase of lower than standard quality materials. Now, on this area of the exam, we're looking at topics such as variance analysis, responsibility accounting, transfer pricing, and performance measures such as ROI, return on investment, and residual income. Now, these topics are great examples of how candidates need to be able to understand something and answer conceptual questions, but then also be able to do a calculation and make those calculations and make those decisions. So in this example, why did I pick this question? This is a variance question, but it's a conceptual question. As you prepare for the exam, I would also ask you, could you calculate the variances? Could you calculate your direct materials price variance and your direct materials efficiency variance? Or the usage variance? Could you calculate your spending variances? Those are the types of questions that you also need to be able to be prepared to do on the CMA exam. Okay, so I'm going to advance this and see how you did. All right, again, majority has the correct answer. The correct answer is the purchase of lower than standard quality materials. So we had a favorable price variance, means we spent less than we were supposed to. But then we used more than we were supposed to. If we had purchased lower than standard quality materials, there were defects, there were problems with the material. We got a good price, but we were going to be inefficient in the use of the material. So that's why D is the correct answer. Our next question is from cost management. Allocation of service department costs to the production department is necessary to control costs, coordinate production activity, determine overhead rates, or maximize efficiency. Now, this is what I call the cost accounting section, this cost management. You have to understand cost accounting terminology and the measurements. In this area, you would be looking at job order costing, process costing, activity-based costing, and life cycle costing. These are all tested in this area of the CMA exam. Now, overhead costs, supply chain management, and business process improvement are also included in this area on Part 1. Okay, this is a quick one, so let's go ahead and advance the poll and see how you did. This one was an easier one. 73%, almost 74% of you have it correct. Why do we need to allocate service department costs? To be able to determine our overhead rates. So great job. So far, everyone is doing a great job. Again, these are example questions to get you thinking about the areas that are tested on the exam. Part 1 also includes the area of internal controls. The primary responsibility for establishing and maintaining internal control rests with the external auditor, management, the controller, or the treasurer. Now, this is one of those questions where I think you have a great opportunity. Remember how I was talking about that 1.5-minute average on the exam? That to get through the multiple choice questions in the time allotted, you need to average about 1.5 minutes per question? This is one of the questions that's not going to take you 1.5 minutes. You should know this one. This should just be, as soon as you see this question, if you've studied and you've prepared, which I know as of today, maybe some of you haven't studied this material yet, but once you've studied the material, once you've reviewed the material, this is a question that should be very straightforward. This is what helps you with your time management, because when you get to a big, long, drawn-out mathematical calculation, what's the change in operating income if this happens and this happens and this happens, you've got some time to go over 1.5 minutes on that complex calculation. So just think about that as you pace yourself and practice with this material. Okay, so let's see how you did. Great. Management. The primary responsibility for establishing and maintaining internal control rests with management. The best answer to this question is B, management. Now I wanted to move to Part 2. Again, I only have time to go through so many sample questions with you, and I wanted to move into the Part 2 CMA exam where corporate finance is tested. The question, which one of a firm's sources of new capital usually has the lowest after-tax costs? Retained earnings, bonds, preferred stock, or common stock? Now, Part 2, corporate finance. This is where you would want to be able to answer questions on risk and return, long-term financial management, raising capital, working capital management. So this is primarily from my experience, this is from my corporate finance or my finance classes in college, or the experience that you have on the job working in finance could also help you with questions such as this. Okay, let's see how you do. Ooh, this was an interesting one. 23% of you said retained earnings, and just over 50% said bonds. The difference between all 4 of these choices is equity versus debt financing. Debt financing, bonds. Bonds would be an example of debt financing. Normally has a lower after-tax cost than equity financing. Now, why would debt financing have a lower after-tax cost? Interest that is paid on the debt is tax deductible. So dividends, so think about retained earnings, common stock, preferred stock. If we are returning our returns that we give to our investors, our owners, dividends on equity are not tax deductible. So the best answer here, which is still majority rule, but this is one that was a little trickier, it seems, for our candidates today, that bonds would have the lowest after-tax cost. And so, again, focusing on debt versus equity financing can really help you in this corporate finance section of the exam. All right. So here I have a question coming up. So part 2, decision analysis, includes make or buy decisions, short-term pricing such as cost of volume, profit analysis, sell as is or process further, should we add or should we drop a segment? So I picked this question because I actually just put it on one of my exams that I give to my students. In the make or buy decision, the relevant costs include variable manufacturing costs as well as, and so the choices were factory management costs, general office costs, avoidable fixed costs, and depreciation costs. What's relevant in a make or buy is the variable manufacturing costs as well as the avoidable fixed costs would be the correct answer. So what cost could be avoided in the decision? We're ready for our last question. We had time here today for about 7. And so this will be our last question. It's coming from Part 2, Investment Decisions. The capital budgeting model that is generally considered the best model for long-range decision-making. Our choices are the payback model, accounting rate of return model, unadjusted rate of return model, or discounted cash flow model. Now, in Part 2, the CMA exam tests our candidates' knowledge of investment decisions. So capital budgeting decisions, discounted cash flow analysis, the payback period, the payback method, accounting rate of return. Now, these topics are managerial accounting topics, but they're also covered. I was talking to my students yesterday. We covered these decisions in my managerial accounting course, but the students are also learning about these in their finance courses. So this is a great area that combines both accounting and finance backgrounds in making decisions that you would see in the real world. This is practical. This is information that you see decision makers having to make, and that's why the exam is so relevant to today's professionals. All right, so let's advance here. And overwhelmingly, you selected discounted cash flow model, and that is the correct answer. So the key here is that we have a discounted cash flow model because with a long-range decision, you need to consider the time value of money. Okay, we finished our fun interactive question and poll session. So we had 7 questions. I want you to think about, how did you do? I mean, did you get some of them right? Did you get most of them right? Now, if you did miss 1 or 2, think about that. So I asked you these questions and maybe you haven't even studied yet. If you took some time to review material and prepare, would you have been able to get them correct or most of them correct? I truly believe that with preparation and studying, you can be successful on the CMA exam. Now remember, please keep in mind that these questions we looked at today were only conceptual, and the actual CMA exam will contain questions that require calculations, as well as maybe multiple steps. You have to do this, this, and then this to arrive at a correct answer. During today's session, we just wanted to show you a small sample of some types of multiple choice questions that could appear. This would let you see how much maybe you already knew or how some of the topics could be tested. Now I'm going to pass the presentation back over to Lisa, who can cover some of the administrative details of the CMA program requirements and exam testing procedures.
Thanks so much, Amy. So as Amy mentioned, I'm going to talk about some of the program requirements. In order to become a CMA, you need to pass both of the CMA exam parts, of course. There are also some education and work experience requirements. The education requirement states that you must have a bachelor's degree from an accredited college or university. The degree can be in any major. However, most CMA candidates hold degrees in accounting or finance. Candidates are not required to have already earned their degree in order to sit for the CMA. In fact, often students will sit for the CMA prior to graduation. Candidates just need to complete their degree within 7 years of passing the CMA exam parts. As for the work experience requirement, candidates need to complete 2 years of professional work experience in order to become a CMA. A complete explanation of the types of positions that would fulfill the work experience requirement are listed in the CMA handbook on the IMA website. In general, work experience that requires analysis will qualify, but internships and jobs that are clerical in nature would not fulfill the work experience requirement. And then to maintain the CMA designation, CMAs are required to maintain their membership with IMA as well as to earn 30 hours of continuing professional education, or CPE, each year, including 2 hours of professional ethics training. The exam is computer-based, and it's taken at Prometric testing centers, which are conveniently located all around the world. There are 3 testing windows offered each year. These are the only months when the CMA exam can be taken at Prometric. CMA candidates schedule the exams on their own and at their own pace. Some candidates will try to complete the exam very quickly, perhaps 1 exam per testing window or both exams within 1 year, while others will take more time. But on average, most people take about 12 to 18 months to complete the 2 exam parts. Now, there are some administrative fees associated with becoming a CMA. The first step, of course, is to join IMA. To pursue the CMA, the next step is to declare yourself a CMA candidate. You do that by paying the CMA program entrance fee. For professional members, that fee is $250. For students, the fee is just $188 US. Finally, once you're ready to sit for an exam, you'll register for a specific exam part and a specific testing window and pay the exam part fee. For professional members, the exam fee is $415 per part. Student members receive an automatic 25% discount off of the regular fee. They don't need to use a code or anything. The IMA system will automatically give them the rate as student members. IMA's customer service team is available to provide support and answer any questions you might have along the way. Feel free to call toll-free within the U.S. or email your questions to our customer service team. If you decide that you'd like to become a CMA, then there are some things that you should keep in mind. First, just like with any goal that you set for yourself, you need to make a personal commitment to become a CMA. What that means is that you should focus on creating a plan that will work for you. The plan should include how you will study and prepare for the exam, when you will carve out time to devote to studying, when you will sit for the exam parts, and so on. You'll want to study the exam topics thoroughly. It's recommended that you purchase study materials that have been created to prepare candidates for the CMA exam, rather than trying to study content from a multitude of college textbooks. If it's been a while since you've been a student and taking tests, then you want to get yourself used to taking tests, managing your test time, and so on. I know for myself, when I sat for some exams more recently, I really had to figure out where I was going to where I was going to go to study, to turn off the distractions, and how I was really going to focus on the study process. Now, the CMA exam is a very challenging exam. While the amount of study time for each exam part will vary by individual, some general guidelines related to study hours are that it could take about 150 hours to prepare for each part of the exam. The CMA exam is very academic in nature, so if you've recently completed a college degree, then you might not need quite as many hours to prepare because the materials will be fresh in your mind. In any case, preparing for the CMA exam requires a significant time commitment. Depending on your study preferences, you can prepare for the exam on your own using self-study materials, or you can sign up for a live instructor-led review course. Live review courses are available in both the traditional classroom delivery approach as well as in a live online webinar type of delivery approach. So I hope you found this session to be helpful. Whether you're preparing to sit for an exam part next month or are just thinking about pursuing the CMA, I wish you all the best of luck on the exam. And now it's time for our Q&A session.
Thanks so much, Lisa and Amy. We'd like to begin addressing some of the questions from our audience members. Let me first remind the participants to send your questions and comments by typing them into the Q&A panel on the left side of your screen. Here's a question we don't necessarily cover very often, but what are the benefits for students who are studying for the CMA while they're in college?
Yeah, so I can start with that, but I think Amy can also add to it as a college professor. First of all, it's a differentiator for anybody, a student or a professional. It's a way to show that, you know, I'm working above and beyond, and I am showing that I'm working to prove that I have a mastery of these topics that are very relevant for the accounting and finance professional. And as a student, you can sit for the exam before you finish your bachelor's degree. But you do have to earn the degree in order to call yourself a CMA, right? You have to pass the exam, prove that you have the bachelor's degree, and then also fulfill the 2 years of work experience. But let's say that you don't have the work experience yet and you're finishing your degree, but you've passed an exam part or two. You can still call that out on your resume or CV to show that you are committed to this program and you have a goal in mind. You know, you have a goal of completing the program. So it can be a real differentiator, something to talk about too in the hiring process. Amy, do you have any comments about that? I know you work with a lot of students in your role.
Yes, and I would say the advantage also is that while you're a student, you're used to studying. You are, I'm old, I always tell my students, and it's harder when you're older or you're just not used to it. You're used to sitting down and having to take multiple choice questions. You're practicing with essay questions and writing on a academic basis every day. So I think the advantage as a student is you're in that study mode and you can be more efficient. I talk to my students and we talk about mapping, and I know the IMA and Strategic Finance has had some really good articles about mapping when you take your exams, you know, CMA and CPA. And so I talk to students all the time. I'm like, oh, you just finished the cost and the internal control courses. So if you just in the last semester took your cost accounting course and your internal control course, or your systems course where you cover internal controls, I said, have you thought about taking part one? I mean, you just took exams in those courses. You just did homework every week in those courses. You might be able to, speed up the process or look at the exam windows and plan out your curriculum and your exam windows to sit for the exam as a student. So I think that is just an advantage as a student. And then as Lisa said, I think it just differentiates you from your peers. The job market is a competitive market, and how do you distinguish yourself from others, and being able to put on the resume that you've passed part one or that you've passed part two would really help.
Yeah, those are great responses, Amy. I agree with the being more efficient at studying. Not that somebody who's been out of school, I mean, you can certainly, anybody can become efficient at studying, but when you are still in school, you still have that in you. I know when I studied for different exams, I got the CSCA and CAE more recently. It took me some time to really figure out where do I need to go to, turn off the distractions and really get focused on the content. So thanks, Amy.
That's great. Now we've had a number of questions actually asking, what calculators can we need, or can we use calculators on the test? And then also, if you want to answer, can I use scratch paper? Is it allowed?
Yeah, so we get a lot of questions like that. And what I do want to do is refer everybody to the CMA handbook that is on the IMA website. It's something that you all should read through and reference as you're preparing for the CMA exam. And I'm going to tell you how to access that. So you go to the IMA website, imanet.org. Under the CMA certification section, click on Getting Started. And then scroll down, and within the gray box, there is a hyperlink to the CMA handbook. And you can download it. It's a PDF document. So under CMA certification, getting started, scroll down to the gray box and look for CMA handbook. And then there is a table of contents at the start of that handbook, and it'll help you jump directly to whatever section or whatever question you might have. And the calculator policy is listed on page 11. And first of all, I will tell you that yes, you should take a calculator with you to the exam. You should take the same calculator that you have been using to study with to the exam. Don't take a different one. Take the one that you're very used to and very comfortable using. We do allow people to take either a simple 6-function calculator that has addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, square root, and percentage on it. So it's just the type you get at the regular local store, okay? You can use that type of a calculator. It can't be programmable, and it can't use any type of tape like an adding machine where it needs to be plugged in, okay? Just a regular calculator. It can be a solar calculator or a battery-operated calculator. But you can also use a financial calculator. Some people are very comfortable with those, and the CMA handbook lists the specific models. They happen to be either Texas Instruments or Hewlett-Packard, HP, financial calculators, and I do want to refer you to that CMA handbook to make sure that if you're using a financial calculator, you are using one of the approved models, okay? So make sure that you're using that. Now, if you're used to using the simple calculator, don't take the financial calculator with you on the day of the exam because you want to be really comfortable with the calculator that you're using. The exam itself at Prometric does have an on-screen calculator function. You do not want to use that, okay? It's very clumsy. Use a calculator that you are used to studying with. The other question, Adam, was about, you said calculators and also one other question.
Scratch paper. Like, can they
Scratch paper. That's
yeah.
also listed in there. And the way they handle scratch paper is that you get 10 sheets of unlined paper. It might be white, but it also could be a pastel color, but it's unlined, and they're stapled together. And so you've got 10 sheets front and back, so essentially 20 different sides of paper to work with for your scratch paper. If you need more, they will give you, I think, one more packet without having to turn any in. But believe me, 20 sides, 10 sheets with each sheet having 2 sides should be sufficient for you. And I do recommend that when you use the scratch paper, you try to be very neat with it. So let's say that question 2 required some calculations and you wrote them. You used the scratch paper to do that calculation. I recommend that you label that as question 2, maybe put a box around it when you're done. That way, if you come back to question 2 to review it later, you can easily find your notes on the scratch paper and see what your assumptions were and what your calculations were. So again, this is all these types of things are all mentioned in that CMA candidate handbook, and I do recommend that you refer to that.
Now, when they're going through the exam, does each question have the same value?
Yeah, that's a question we get a lot, and it's really good to know that in the multiple choice portion of the exam, all of the questions are weighted equally. So yes, they all have the same value. So you could get a question that's really simple. It's more like a definition, very simple, defining something or just being able to choose something it's only a word question, right, without any calculations. And then you might have a question that requires multiple calculations and multiple steps in order to arrive at the correct answer. Both of those questions have the same weighting. So you want to have a strategy to go through the multiple choice questions so that you're answering those quicker to answer questions, maybe the ones without calculations, pretty quickly, and then saving time so that you can spend more time then on those longer questions. And we do offer a webinar in April of each year. It does get recorded, so it can be played back by IMA members by going into our webinar archives. And that webinar focuses specifically on test-taking tips and strategies, and we review some specific strategies for managing your time on the exam, and some that are specific to just the multiple choice exam. So, going through and answering those quicker to answer questions first and saving time for the more lengthy questions at the end. But the answer is all questions have the same point value, so it's really important that you see all of the same questions and you don't spend too much time on any one question, that you balance your time on all of the different types of questions.
Thanks, Lisa. So, Amy, what about the questions we saw today? Are those indicative of the type of questions they'll see on the CMA exam?
They were good examples. I also had to keep in mind the size of the area that we had to work with in the poll. I would say that I'm often asked, how do I practice or how do I study? And my answer is you practice. The more exam questions you view, the better you get at just taking exam questions. So a lot of the questions on the CMA exam will say something like, which of the following is the best? So we had that one about the discounted cash flow model for investment decisions. Which of the following would be the best method? Which of the following is least likely to influence? Being able to make actual decisions. Should we make or buy? Should we eliminate the unprofitable segment or should we keep the unprofitable segment? Which of these products is more profitable? So being able to answer those questions conceptually and in an analytical, numerical question is important. A lot of students asked me too, they said, should I study differently between multiple choice and essay? So we didn't talk about essays today, but Lisa, there's also an essay session in the CMA candidate webinar series as well. And I always tell students that you study a topic. I don't say I'm studying multiple choice or I'm studying an essay. I'm studying investment decisions. I'm studying capital budgeting. And I'm going to practice with multiple choice questions, and I'm going to practice writing essays or looking at those essay type scenarios. But what I also tell students with practicing with multiple choice questions, reviewing the wrong answers is going to help you with other questions later. So you know how when you're looking at which of the following is the best method, and you maybe pick the wrong one. In reviewing the answer explanation to why that question was or why that method was not the best choice, it helps you understand that method, which might be the right answer to a question that you see later on or on your actual exam. So I would say that the questions we had today were very, very good examples. I tried to give a variety. But I would say you're studying topics and then practicing with topics. And it's like running. The more you run, the faster that you get, the better you get. And so practicing is my number one suggestion as you prepare for the exam.
Thanks, Amy. So, you gave some good practical tips on how to prepare, but what materials should somebody use, whether they want to find a self-study course or a live? Where should somebody go to kind of look for those materials? Because, the 2020 exam is right around the corner. They want to start preparing. Where should they get started?
Yeah, I would recommend that they go to the IMA website. There are quite a few very high-quality CMA exam review providers offering materials. Surgent is, of course, the sponsor of today's webinar. They offer very high-quality materials. So what you want to do is, first of all, you do want to purchase some dedicated CMA exam preparation materials. I do recommend that you have a full program available to you with all of the different resources that you need, from books and sample questions and video lectures and things like that. So I recommend that you check out what's listed on the IMA website and identify the program that is really best for you, that suits your learning style and is the best fit for you.
So going back to the actual content, we've had a couple of people ask, they added Tech and Analytics to Part 1. Was something else removed, or did they kind of rebalance the other topics in order to fit that in?
Yeah, they rebalanced the other topics. So there were a few what I would call tweaks, so adjustments, with some content being removed and a little bit of other content being added. But really, in order to introduce that new topic of technology and analytics, we really just shuffled around the weighting of the other sections on Part 1 in order to include technology and analytics on Part 1.
That's great, Lisa. Now, we talked about students, but what about somebody who's far in their career in the professional services industry, and is the content of the CMA relevant to an accounting and finance professional working in something like professional services?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to mention two things. I know we were talking a lot about students because we had a question from somebody who is a student, and we were saying how it's really it can really work to their benefit to sit for the exam early, right, earlier in the and be able to capitalize on the fact that they're already very efficient at studying. But I want to emphasize here that a lot of people for the CMA exam when they're further on in their career, and it is definitely a goal that you can achieve at any point in your career. We were just saying that students already know how to study. I studied for some of my other exams more recently, and I just had to figure out how to get things lined up so that I could be an efficient studier, and I was successful. So please don't take our comments about the benefits of being younger and in your university days as meaning that you might be too old for this exam. I know people who have passed it very far out in their careers and have been very successful. So don't take age as something that is keeping you from being successful. But the other question was just about relevance to different types of industries. And the CMA exam is relevant across all industries. The topics such as budgeting, planning, reporting on performance, tracking and controlling costs, technology and analytics, investment decisions, ethics, decision analysis. These are important topics whether you are working in a manufacturing firm, a service company, a insurance industry, financial services, merchandising company. These are important for all types of companies in all different industries, and also companies of all sizes. I often tell students, budgeting is important in a really large multinational company because they have to be able to report out to the industry analysts to forecast the earnings for a company, and they have to be pretty close. Otherwise, you look bad, to the financial markets. But you also need to have really strong budgeting and planning skills in small companies because you might have to, be able to make the payroll obligation for next week, right? So budgeting and planning and a lot of these topics are just extremely important across any size company, but also across any type of industry.
Lisa, can I add to this too?
Yes.
And I just wanted to share my experience, and when I joked that I was old, my experience was I took the CMA exam 10 years after college. So I definitely fit that criteria of the young professional or the professional who didn't take it as a student. And I would say that experience was key in that I could drill down into the areas that I didn't have experience in, and that's what I had to study. So my joke I always tell everyone is when I got ready to take part 2 of the exam, I had not taken a corporate finance course in the century that I was in. We were, it's almost 2020 now, but I joked that I said I took it, it's been 15 years almost since I'd had a corporate finance course, 10 years after graduating. And so I joked that what I found was I had been doing financial accounting every day for the past 10 years. That area of the exam, I didn't have to spend as much time on because I felt very confident. But then I was able to, as a professional, say, okay, this is where I don't have experience. This is what I haven't done for a while. So this is what I need to practice and review. And the silver lining was it just made me better. It made me better in my work. It made me better at making decisions because I was relearning. I always say it's a review. You've covered this material, likely covered most of this material, or been at least exposed to some of this material between your college courses and your work experience. But it really allowed me to enhance my performance on the job and what I was doing, as well as, gaining that expertise to be able to pass an exam.
Thanks, Amy.
Yeah, that's some great insight. Thank you. So, Lisa, maybe you can share just some of the benefits of being an IMA member while you're preparing for the CMA exam, and maybe Amy can share some insight too. We've had a few people asking, do I need to be an IMA member, and what's the benefit of that while I'm preparing? So maybe you can give some insight into that.
Yeah, so So IMA, we're a global professional association. We have now over 140,000 members all around the world. And the people who join IMA, they're working generally in an internal accounting and financial management position. But what's really unique about IMA members is that people join because they are interested in their careers, in their career advancement, and in really being the best that they can be in their jobs and to really help drive their careers, but also to help the performance of their companies, right? So you're not going to join IMA if you have no interest in your career or in really being the best that you can be. So when you join IMA, you're part of a community of other like-minded, high-quality accounting and finance professionals. And so you have that networking capability, both online and in person, depending on where you're located. But we also offer a lot of other high-quality reference and research materials, as well as continuing education offerings. I know something that's very popular with our members is our webinar series that we have, I think, like 5 to 7 webinars offered every month at no charge for our IMA members. And these focus on things that are really important in your career, whether it's leadership skills, the impact of technology, artificial intelligence, robotic process automation, AI, and so on, different changes happening in the accounting and finance function. So we really aim to keep you up to date on the types of topics and content that you need to be successful in your career. Did you want to add anything, Amy?
I didn't have anything for that.
Okay. There was one thing I wanted to mention before we close, Adam. I know that there have been a lot of questions related to scoring of the exam and the essay portion of the exam. I do encourage you all, as IMA members, to log into the IMA website and then go to the webinar section under the Education Center. And from there, you can access some archived webinars. And as I mentioned, the April webinar of every year focuses specifically on exam taking tips and strategies, and it talks about the weighting between the two sections and how to really manage your time throughout the exam. And then the August webinar that's part of this series focuses specifically on the essay portion of the exam. So today we focused primarily on the multiple choice portion of the exam, but we do have some other really good webinars out there that are great resources for you.
Well, thanks so much, Lisa and Amy, for both of your insights, and I'm going to turn things back over to our host, Margaret.
Thank you, Adam. At this time, I'd like to thank our presenters, Lisa Bowden and Amy Ford, for sharing their knowledge and expertise with us. We're very appreciative that they've made time for IMA and for our audience today. And also, thank you, Adam Larson, for moderating today's event. As a last step, please be sure to complete the event evaluation survey, which should be visible on your screen. If it has not popped open, please click the evaluation survey icon at the bottom of your screen for access. I would like to again thank Surgent CMA Review for sponsoring today's webinar, and thank all of you for your participation in today's event, your commitment to IMA, and your professional development through IMA's CMA Candidate webinar series. I look forward to spending time with you again soon, when we'll enjoy some more valuable and interesting information through the IMA webinars.